Thank you for coming down. I just have a few questions to ask you. All right, Ray. Well, welcome to the show.
I appreciate you having me, brother.
I appreciate you coming on. I've been wanting to connect with you for a while, and I'm glad we were finally able to make this work. I kind of like to just throw out some get-to-know-you type questions, so let me just start with some easy ones. Coffee or tea?
Coffee, absolutely, man. Tea's for British people that we beat in the war, so no tea.
I love that, and I'm getting that answer more and more, so I appreciate that. Any particular type of coffee? It doesn't have to be a brand per se, but any particular type?
Well, I mean, if you're going to ask me, I know you have sponsors, so that's a loaded question for me because we do have our own Law Dog coffee, but I won't do that to you. So, but no. Yes, we have a brand that supports our charity. That's why.
Perfect. Yeah, definitely. We'll give them a shout out towards the end as well.
Right.
What's your favorite place to have that cup of coffee?
You know, there's two. I've got two places. I've got two answers for that. One of my favorite places in the world is Lake Havasu, Arizona. And if I can go out there and have a cup of coffee and look at the lake or sit on my boat and have coffee, I'm happy. Or I've been enjoying doing like a live stream, drinking coffee with my buddies, in the mornings. And that's kind of been as fun as hanging out, being the recluse that I usually am. So.
That's awesome. I have to ask on Lake Havasu. I've never been, and I've heard great things, but then I'm also hearing more and more how crazy busy it gets out there. Is that true?
Back, I started going there in the 90s, probably, or actually late 80s. In the 80s and 90s, it was a crazy college party place, and MTV was out there doing their thing. And now it's mostly, I would say it's 50% current or retired cops and firemen. So everything that comes with that's about what it is, which is probably just as wild as anything else.
Yeah, probably just as crazy as it was in the MTV days, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. You know how that goes. So
yes, I do. So let me ask you, Ray, you got a best or worst travel story?
Oh, I have a best, or actually a worst travel story. It involves losing my luggage for 3 months.
Oh, wow.
It took 3 months to get it. I was actually speaking at an engagement there, and I had to borrow a buddy's entire clothing setup, and then I never saw my clothes again for 3 months, and they just showed up at my door after they had swore at the airlines that they didn't have it. So that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that, like being in Florida with one set of clothes and then a borrowed set, and it wasn't a good time.
No, I'm sure it wasn't. And getting it a few months later, they must have just magically found it in some dusty corner of the warehouse.
No, apparently what they did was they shipped it to the hotel that I had asked them to ship it to the day of. The hotel never bothered to tell me.
Oh, that's nice.
So it was nice. It worked out real good.
Yeah, wonderful customer service. We always appreciate that.
Yeah. And then it was my fault that it was there and taking up room in their storage. So you can imagine how that went.
Well, it's always the consumer's fault. Those days of the customer is always right seem to be long gone.
Oh, far gone. Absolutely.
You got a favorite nonfiction book?
Nonfiction. You know what? I do. I read it a long time ago. I came back and reread it. That's how I know that it's a good one for me. It's an Andrew Breitbart book, so I probably lost half your audience there, but it is Righteous Indignation is a great book. Talks about, if you read that now, it was written in 2012, and it's talking about how the media is treating conservatives and police and everyone right now. It's like he wrote it today. Very good read.
Okay. Yeah, I will definitely link that up and I'll check it out myself. That's one I haven't personally looked at. So let's, Ray, let's start with just a little bit about your journey. Just tell us a little bit about you and what brought you to where you're at now.
Sure. So I'm a multi-generation cop. I'm a fourth generation guy. My great uncle or grandfather, depending on which family tree you listen to, was the sheriff of Los Angeles County for 28 years. Started the CHP, did all these things. I came up, my mom and dad were both detectives, and my dad moved on to sergeant. I came up and became a CSO straight out of the military. They were on a hiring freeze, so I was a community service officer, which was basically taking non violent calls, like report calls and towing cars and doing burg reports and stuff like that in the city of Paramount in South, or basically in Los Angeles County. I became a deputy sheriff at LA County, worked the jails, trained in South Central Los Angeles, which was eye-opening, even for me who had been 10-8 as a civilian. I mean, I rode with deputies about once a week as a civilian, and I was attacked and stabbed in a car, and the deputy shot and killed the guy. So I'd already been through a couple things even before getting deputy. But I trained in Willowbrook and Firestone in South LA, which was incredibly eye-opening. Stayed a different patrol assignment out there for a couple of years. And then I moved to Riverside Sheriff, which, you know, people like me to compare Riverside County Sheriff with LA County Sheriff. And I say LA County has the best patrol deputies in the world. Riverside County has the best rounded deputies because they have time to go follow up and do cases and investigations. I was writing search warrants in patrol. Like that did not happen in LA because we're running from call to call to call, from body to body. But I went out there and I worked at really good, like interesting neighborhoods, got into some gang task force, worked street teams and narcs and stuff like that. And you know, got into a big old OIS that lasted 2.5 years or 2.5 hours. It felt like 2.5 years.
I'm sure.
Went to detectives, and then, you know, I'm a station detective, and I get the call that everybody wants. One of the captains I love was like, hey, do you who I had worked for before, he's like, hey, do you want to come to homicide? I'm like, yes, I want to come to homicide. I'm thinking, I'm going to check the box. I'm going to stay there until I'm 60. I'm never leaving. This will be it. And then I get a transfer, or I get a knock on my office, and they're like, hey, did you put in a transfer? Like 2 weeks later, and I'm like, yes, what is it? And I'm thinking, here it is. I'm gone, right? Oh, internal affairs. That's where you're going. I'm like, what? So I go to IA, which I'm not really the kind of cop that's IA. Like, obviously I hate dirty cops like anybody else, but that's not like my goal. That wasn't my career path that I chose, is to go work IAB. Right. So I get there and I ended up working mostly officer involved shootings, which I actually enjoyed because I got to be the voice of reason. Cause, you know, a young kid with less than 5 years on gets into a shooting, and all of a sudden the chaos of homicide and investigators and IA and coroners and big, you know, media events start to freak those kids out. And I was able to pull them aside and be like, hey, look, I'm the one who decides your fate. You're fine. Let's get through this, and kind of walk them through. So from there, I made sergeant, went to the jail, loved it, worked all the ERT teams. And then I finally got to my patrol as a sergeant. That's where I left. I was patrol sergeant in Temecula out in Riverside County, and had a great time there. Busy city for not being a high crime city, but it was extremely busy. And from there, my other businesses kind of took off. This stuff I do with law enforcement online got to the point where I was earning far more outside of the job than inside. And I felt like I could make more of an impact. And honestly, for lack of a better term, I kind of felt like I had rolled the dice stuff, you know, and I mean, all the search warrant entries and all the stupid chances I've taken, and all the extra things that I pushed when I shouldn't have. I survived them all, and I was like, you know, maybe now's a good time. So I took the exit, and I'm just an online guy who runs his mouth now, pretty much.
You know, there's nothing wrong with that. So how many years total were you in?
16 sworn, and 2.5, so almost 20 total.
Okay.
And military prior to that. So I got out pretty early. I'm 45 now. I got out when I was 42. So, you know, I got out pre-retirement, the whole thing. You know, and when I got out, it was about a month before the Dallas 5, like those got killed. It was, the tensions were super high. It was a mess after Ferguson. Yeah. You know, it was it felt like a lot of the climate that was today, much worse now. Right. But I saw the writing on the wall, and I saw an opportunity to take, you know, like in social media to reach out and share like the voice and perspective from law enforcement. And, you know, as well as I do, often being active duty, it's hard to say some things that you may feel or share certain opinions, because you can get in trouble. So,
and especially now with the rise of the cancel culture and everything that we're dealing with right now, it's even worse. In fact, they're targeting people who put something out just on their personal social media.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people who liked a post and get in trouble at their department. I feel like there has to be voices out there, and kudos to you for being one of those voices. but I'm like the unhinged voice with no, you can't cancel me. I have I'm internally funded and monetized, right? Like I don't have sponsors other than things I'm involved with. So nobody can tell me what to say anymore. So it's a nice feeling to be able to do that.
Absolutely. That's a great position to be in, and a needed position, because we need people that can just speak truth. And that's one of the things that resonated me with your brand.
Yeah. I mean, it's someone has to speak up for the actual cops out there who can't, period. Like there's so many tales of guys getting screwed over or beat up or run over and screwed over by their department afterwards. And, I work with the Wounded Blue quite a bit. I'm the social media director for them, essentially. It's a foundation for injured and disabled peace officers, and there's peer counseling. And with that team, I can send guys who may have what the politically incorrect term I have is head noise, which most cops can relate with that. But
Right.
The sad part is if somebody has head noise or PTSD or whatever you want to call it, a lot of departments you go to, they make you feel like you're going to have to work the desk. They're going to take your gun. You get marked. All these things happen. So like the Wounded Blue is one of these organizations that people can go to, and they have peer counseling from current cops, ex-cops who have been through it. They don't report it to your department. And it's another place where people can get help without screwing themselves in their career. So like having advocates out there for peace officers, plus organizations that actually help the cops get through
Right.
their career so they can make it 20, 30 years. I mean, that's what I'm all about now.
That's awesome. Yeah, and we'll get more into that towards the end, but I definitely want to talk more about what you're doing with the Wounded Blue, because I think that's so needed. And a lot of why I started what I'm doing, depending on how far you went back into what I have here. When I first started this about a year and a half ago, we ended up losing one of the girls on our platoon to suicide. And so it really drew home what I felt I needed to start. And it really, gave me my why, if you would, as to why we're doing what we're doing. Let me ask you, in your time in law enforcement, what would you say is one of your more favorite roles? I know you want to spend more time in the CID world and more time towards the homicide detective, but what would you say of those different roles you had was one of your most favorite ones, and why?
There was one time, this was probably 07, 08. I was out working in the city of Hemet in Riverside County. I was still just a deputy, and we were on a street enforcement team. There was about between 4 and 6 of us were assigned to this team, but we were the tightest partners ever, fully trusted each other, all extremely hard workers, A players, grinders, like doing the work. And we were also massive risk takers. So, we were serving probably 2 drug warrants a week or gun warrants a week. Plus we worked in a really active area with an Indian reservation that we were having a lot of issues with at the time. I believe our station had 7 OISs in about a 6-month period.
Oh, wow.
With members of that reservation, running gun battles, like pursuits, windows getting shot out while you're driving, the whole thing. My buddy took a partner on New Year's Eve, or my partner took me around to the windshield, and it hit his lapel of his jacket. He came so close, right?
Oh, my God.
But that period of time, there was a year where, we were just hooking and booking everybody, taking good cases, getting a lot of dope off the street, a lot of guns off the street. We were the go-to guys, and it was the funnest time of my life. I wish I could just have done just that for 20 years, and I probably wouldn't have survived, but it was a hell of a good time.
Right. Yeah, no, those street crimes units and those units that can get out there, they're the fun part of policing. They're the part that we all kind of enjoy, to get out there and be hands-on. What'd you think of being a sergeant in the time that you were in? Did you like that opportunity of going back and working with the younger generation coming into law enforcement, or walk us a little bit through that?
Yeah, I did. I'll be honest. I took the test to get out of IA, right? Like I was just done with internal affairs. I was done fighting with admin and the chiefs. And that's what I did. I'd go in there and do battle, right?
Right.
So I went to sergeant, and I enjoyed being a field training officer. Like a TO was one of my most rewarding jobs, next to like the teams or task force that I've been on and stuff. Being a field training officer, I felt like I was the guardian of the department, and I took that very serious. I rolled up as many people who didn't make training as I did ones who successfully went on, because, I felt like you could have that say to where, hey, this person should do well, or hey, they're going to get hurt, let's get rid of them because it's not good for them or the department. And I don't have a problem saying that. And as a sergeant, it's just, for me, it was just that times 10. Like I'd have 10 guys in my shift, and I would know that there was a couple that were going to do extremely well. And I would mentor them to get to the next level, and some that were at the bottom, I had to watch to make sure that they're going to make it and not screw themselves up or the department. And then the ones who just needed that direction and push. And the last thing you want is that salty patrol sergeant doing briefing who doesn't want to be there and is basically essentially begging the guys not to get into anything proactive because they don't want to do work or write the reports for the pursuits or the uses of force or any of the things that go with it. And, you know, if being able to impact a patrol shift to give them an environment where they want to go do the right thing and be a cop, like, I loved it. It was a good time.
Yeah. No, that's a great answer. And you're absolutely right. Because I know when I first started, I'm sure it was for you too, you had those sergeants that are exactly a little bit retired on duty, like you just said, or as some people say, rusting in place. And that's kind of what they do. They just sit there and they're rip rod, you know, and they don't want to do anything. They just don't want to do the work. And yet, I think that's kind of changed, at least at our agency and at other agencies that I've seen. There seems to be a new generation of people with the same mindset of what you just said, where their goal is to take guys and bring them to the next level, as well as try to protect and keep safe the guys that may not quite be there yet. And Lord knows that's probably the most stressful part of the job.
Yeah, I mean, it's important. And another reason why I promoted even more to get out of IA is because, like, a lot of good people don't want to promote. Like, they want to stay in detectives or officer or deputy positions. So you get stuck with a bunch of people that shouldn't be supervising anybody because they're good test takers or they have their masters, or, I mean, that's the politics of it all, right? Like, so I kind of, you know, I felt the calling a little bit, and it was actually, looking back, as some of the more rewarding things I've done, even though it wasn't necessarily the most exciting stuff I've done. But even in the jail, like, you know, working in sheriff's departments, being a sergeant in the jail, you're getting baby cops. And we had correctional deputies that were 18 years old coming in. So, like, I've got 18-year-old kids in a big, scary jail, you know, and we're having jail disturbances and fights and teaching them. That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. Like, I felt like I had more impact on them, like an 18 or 21-year-old kid, than I could have with a 30-year-old trainee hitting patrol, you know?
I couldn't agree with you more. And as someone who came into this career later in life, I was in my 30s when I started in law enforcement. And yeah, I completely understand. In fact, I can't imagine doing this job at 18, 19 years old. Knowing myself then, I'm like, no, I cannot imagine it.
Well, and as a sergeant, half your job is keeping them out of trouble and keeping them from screwing themselves, right? Because they're kids. They're literally kids. Like, you know, and when you're that age, you don't think of it that way. But when you're in your late 30s or 40s and now you're supervising a bunch of kids, you're like, damn it. Like,
yeah,
you gotta keep you from your own worst enemy more than anything else, you know? And most of them get it, but, you know, some still think, oh, you're the mean sergeant, but whatever, they'll figure it out later if they're still around.
Absolutely. Well, and that's the thing. And when they hit 30, 40 years old, like we are, they're going to be like, you know what, I'm glad, because those are the sergeants, those are the people in my life that I'm like, you know, I'm glad I had that mentor. I had that person I could reach out to and kind of help me out.
Yeah, everyone remembers the sergeants that they loved, that they worked for, that supported them, taught them something. One of my favorite sergeants ever is John Morin. I'll never forget him. He's a captain now at a station. You know, he taught me how to go, and I worked South Central and did dope investigations all the time, but he taught me different levels. In a patrol environment, the guy would sit there and teach people how to develop informants in patrol for drugs. Very cool. We were developing info and writing warrants, and then basically handing the warrants to the special teams. Here, we're serving this, I'm going. And they were like, what? And our whole shift was like that. So you have like a stellar supervisor could change everything. He propelled a lot of good cops out from his supervision. So, you know, you take little things like that, and for every one of him, there's 4 that aren't like that, but, you know, you just try to be one and see what you can do to keep the good part alive, no matter how many people get into law enforcement that they shouldn't, or aren't there for the right reasons. There's always going to be a core of people that are. No matter how defunded we are, no matter how hated we are, there's always going to be people drawn to this profession for the right reasons. And you have to embrace those people, even if it's a smaller percentage, just so they can be successful. Because those are the ones that really, you know, I try to tell people, like, there's only 20, 30, 40% of cops that are actually really out there doing it right. A lot of people, lazy, disgruntled, whatever. Like, there's so much of that. Like, people don't get that. And you have to embrace the ones that are hard charging, protect them from themselves, show them a good path, help them out, and move them up. Because if your department just is promoting people who are the other 50% or so, like, you're in trouble. And it shows in a lot of these departments with horrible admin decisions and all these riots and stuff that's been going on. I mean, it's been awful, some of the things we've seen.
Yeah, which, like I think you just pointed out, it has a lot to do with a crisis in leadership often.
Yes,
Um, it,
100%.
that's a good segue into where I was going to go next with this. 2020 seems to be falling apart a little bit. Any thoughts on that?
Well, it's an election season. I mean, I think that's probably 75% of it, to be
Yeah,
honest. Like, I think there's opportunists that are taking events like the George Floyd murder, which I came out, did a video on it the next day. Hey, I don't know one cop that was for that, like who defended that.
right.
No one
Same
defended
here.
that. Yeah, and that event was taken and politicized and pushed and pushed and pushed by the media to get us to these points where we are now. I think it'll slow down after November. I mean, it sounds crazy and conspiracy laden, but it's not. It's the truth. I mean, I think this is the hardest time for cops in America that I've ever seen or heard. And I've heard all the stories from growing up, like my parents in the 60s and 70s taking Molotov cocktails over the station walls and riots in East LA and Watts. Like they've been through all that, and they're like, this is the worst it's been. I think you have to see more people like us out here telling the story. Like that's why I'm doubling down on content and putting things out there. But it's going to shake out a lot of people out of law enforcement that don't belong there. That's the only positive I can see out of it. But
Right.
the things that are going to hurt and sting the most is defund the police and this talk that the left has and stuff. It's not a talking point. They're doing it. They're physically doing it. Like an LA County Sheriff has a ballot initiative on for November to defund them by $880 million. Okay.
Wow.
Which all their special teams, detective units, anything beyond station detectives and homicide is probably gone. And you're just having street guys. The resources that and the damage that causes, and it's for talking points.
Right.
I mean, it's crazy because then like Seattle just cut 100 officers from their first round of defunding. Good luck hiring people in Seattle PD. And then what happens? That's the scariest part to me. Like to wrap this up and to answer your question, 2020, the scariest part is what happens in 2021 when these departments are defunded and nobody wants to go and be a cop anymore.
Right.
And who are they going to hire? Because they're going to have to fill certain positions. People don't understand that. Police departments have to fill certain positions. They have to field so many units in patrol. They
Right.
have to backfill these units no matter what. They have to hire. And we've seen it before, like in the 90s, they started dropping hiring standards. In the mid 2000s, they started dropping hiring standards and we paid for it. Like when I worked IA, I could tell you that probably 75% of the people we dealt with who were actually idiots came from 05, 06.
Okay.
Because we were on huge hiring sprees, dropping standards, and we hired a bunch of people that shouldn't have been there. And I think we're headed to that in even a worse way. It's going to be bad.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of where I was going to go with it next. Is curious, what you thought the long-term perspective may be, or prospective, looking at kind of what's happening. Because, like you just pointed out, this whole defund the police movement, which is not just rhetoric, it's exactly what they're trying to do, is scary because we actually kind of need the opposite. If two things. One of my talk show hosts I enjoy listening to, he always says two things can be true at once, and Ben Shapiro. And I think he's absolutely right. Two things can be true at once. And so, yes, we need to reform some things because I think we should always be in a continuing process of improvement. We can get better, whether we're talking our personal lives or the business that we're in, we can always get better. But defunding is going to do the opposite because we need the funds and we need the ability to continue the training, to continue the mental health side, both for the officers and for the community, to be able to stop some of these drugs like fentanyl and so forth that are killing people at higher rates than COVID-19 in a lot of different areas.
It's the big thing for me is I wish I could get the regular average citizen to understand is defunding is going to make it worse. It's going to make more or less qualified officers, less quality officers, less motivated officers, all of those things. And then the answer is better training. It's actually funding the police. A national standard for minimum training would be like one of the best things that we could do in law enforcement because it's not the big departments. I came from LA Sheriff, 10,000 deputies, Riverside Sheriff, over 2,000. Pretty good sized departments.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of guys I talked to, like in Alabama, on a 50-man department, and their training consists of one range day a year and maybe one defensive tactic day. That's nothing. Like, how is that even okay? I can pick apart use of force body cam videos and go, that shooting could have been avoided. That one could have been avoided. That could have been avoided, all with better training.
Yep.
Like jujitsu for everyone. I'm all about it. Like let's get people learning this stuff, tactics that work, double down on training for cops, and there would be less deadly force encounters. But taking it the other way is not going to reduce deadly force. It's just going to make everything worse. And the crime that we're already seeing go up isn't just from defunding. It's from lack of prosecution and lack of support of the cops. Cops don't feel like they can go out and be proactive and stay out of trouble, or that if they arrest somebody, something's even going to happen to them in most cities. So what are they going to do? They're going to park and they're going to go to calls.
Yeah.
And the only people that hurt from that are the people who live there and the cops who work there. It's not the politicians who talk about it all day.
And that's what they fail to realize too, is that proactive policing. I mean, I'm a big believer in the broken windows theory. I don't know if you are as well, but
Yes.
Most cops I talk to, it resonates with them. And just, it works. I've seen it work. And that is not what causes like the George Floyd incident. Like you said, that was an isolated incident with someone that did things they shouldn't have done or continued to do things they shouldn't have done. Because I'm sure you've seen the updated video as well that gives a little bit of preview as to what occurred prior to the incident.
Yeah, it was very, very convenient that the AG of Minnesota chose to not publish that and give a little more context to it. Doesn't change the actual crime and what happened with the knee to the neck. That shouldn't have
Absolutely.
Occurred.
Absolutely.
There's a lot more context to that than was ever put out, and they fought putting that out for a reason. Let's be real. So playing political games with police is never a good idea.
Right. And that's exactly it. Something I just want to point out that you said. So national standards, yes. Nationalized police, no. Correct? Is that pretty much where you're at?
Absolutely correct. Yeah, I don't want any kind of national police. It needs to be community by community needs, but a basic standard, like and it's not even, it's just to get the poorly funded departments up to speed. Like They don't have the resources. It's not that they don't want to train, they're broke. They don't have the budgets for this stuff. Like, so it's important that we give them the resources to get the proper training so that they can survive encounters. There was a kid in South Carolina, I do not remember his name, earlier this year, who was working patrol 10-8 out on the street prior to being trained at the academy, and he got shot and killed on duty. That should never occur. Never.
Right.
Allowing that to happen because of budget concern is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, and there's a lot of departments. So I'm from the state of Florida, where we have much like California, we have large sheriff's departments here as well. Ours isn't quite to the size of yours, about half of what you were saying with that 2,000 sworn and so forth. So, but it's a large department. I also, as we were talking off camera, I enjoy the rural areas of this country. And so I've been looking at some more remote areas in, say, Wyoming and some of those states. So while I was out there earlier this year, I had some conversations with some sheriff's departments out there. And exactly what you said. They were like, yeah, well, you can start, you'd be here a year before we'd get you through the academy. And, you know, you start talking about pay scales and stuff. And they're like, well, we have deputy 1 and then we have deputy 2. And
they're like, hey, they make $18 an hour. And you're like,
exactly.
What?
And they're like, so the sheriff, he makes 50 grand a year. I'm like, okay, that's not enough money for this profession, unfortunately.
No. And even in California, it's crazy. I mean, high cost of living, big departments, you're going to make 6 figures just to start without overtime and all that stuff. But there's departments out here paying 50 grand still. Like in there's a bunch of rural areas in California. People don't realize that, but like it's 70% agriculture, and they don't pay enough for quality people to go there. You get what you pay for, unfortunately. Like, I'm not saying there's not good people at those departments, but when you're not funded, you're not going to get the best people to go there. You're not going to get anyone leaving. You're not going to bring in experience with laterals. It's not going to happen. And if they know you don't have a training budget, you know, what's the upside to these departments? They're not even on a level playing field, even with recruiting. And that's another conversation, right? Like, if one department is better at recruiting than the other, how about those communities that have to deal with the bad recruiting?
Right. And I don't know how many times, and you spending time in IA, and I know with our professional standards, I don't know how many times you see these people not make it at a certain academy or at a certain agency and then go get picked up by one of these agencies we're talking about, which creates like the Derek Chauvin type thing where they're pointing out, hey, this guy's had X number of IA complaints. Why is he still on the street? Well, a lot of times they can leave one jurisdiction, say here in Florida, where they were resigned under investigation, and go to one of these smaller departments and get picked up instantaneously.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not against police reform. Some police reform goes to the departments doing better for their members, right? Like one of the things that they're talking about and throwing around nationally, and especially in California, is decertification. Just what you're talking about. You know, if someone gets fired for excessive force or for a legitimate reason that they should not be a police officer anymore, not only will they be fired, they'll be decertified with their qualifications in post or whatever it is in the state, to where they lose their license to be a cop. I don't think that's a terrible idea. We had the same thing. There's a couple departments in Southern California, and everybody knew there's 3 or 4 departments. If you get fired, like, you know, no matter what it is, unless you're getting a criminal charge on you, you're going to get hired there. They take everyone who gets fired. They don't pay for anyone to go to the academy. They're almost all laterals, and you get what you pay for, and you get what you're hiring, right? So that shouldn't be the case. There shouldn't be guys with massive, horrible, excessive force cases that get fired and then be able to still be a peace officer somewhere else. That's not good for the community. It's not good for the cops. It's not good for anybody.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that that's something that should be, and again, I keep coming back to when people use the word reform, the people who are using that term, I don't agree with typically, but in general, just the statement of, hey, should we have reform? Absolutely. Because there's never we can always get better. I mean, law enforcement today is not what it was 20 years ago. And it's certainly not what it was 50 years ago. And, you know, what our parents and grandparents and them were doing out there is completely different than the world we live in. The training level, like you said, a lot of guys, even to get promoted, have master's degrees. I mean, I don't know how many guys, when they're coming into the agency now, it's almost unheard of for someone to come in without at least a 4-year degree, because it's something we pretty much are looking for, as opposed to, you know, even with the guys that started 20 years ago in our age group, most of them did not have a college degree.
No, and you know, I go both ways with that. You're seeing people only being able to promote with degrees, but some of the best cops I ever met didn't have anything. I'm not tooting my own horn. I didn't have a degree, but I went to the military first. There's so many people that went to the military first, and they should not be restricted from becoming on as a cop because of the degree. But, you know, like, a degree doesn't make a cop good, but it's not a bad thing. You know what I mean? So it's, the standards of hiring are changing. The screening processes are changing. And the problem is it's who they're looking for is changing as well. Right. So sometimes I feel like they would rather have, like in the background process, someone with a degree and 0 life experience, which is
dangerous.
Yes, right? Like, or, you know, someone without a degree who's been in the military, this and that. I know of an agency in Southern California that was disqualifying applicants because if they were in the Battle of Fallujah, they were automatically DQ'd because of presumptive PTSD issues. And I'm like, how is that okay?
Yeah.
So
here's somebody who actually has the skills and has been in a situation. I mean, if they pass the psych test and they pass the same criteria as everybody else, why would you not want that person?
You know, but it'll take a kid with a bachelor's who's done nothing and still lives at home with mom. So it's like, you know, it's a tough game. You can't predict how somebody's going to be as a cop, right? But you need good standards, do the backgrounds, but I don't think you need to exclude people because they don't have the education.
We can
if they can write, they can write.
I agree with you 100%. And I think life experience. So I didn't get a degree till I came into law enforcement again, because it was one of those things. I didn't think I needed it. I'm glad I didn't go to, forgive me, some of my listeners, but to one of those indoctrination camps until I got to the point that I needed, that it benefited my career. So I had a reason to go. And I knew that I enjoy teaching, and I do a lot with our academy and so forth. So I wanted to have that be grounded in a little bit of the actual study side of it, so I could bring that into my career going forward. And I may even move on to my master's, and I've been looking at a master's program just more because I want to be able to get into arguments with people that say you have to have a degree, though understanding that life experience is really where it's at.
Yeah, and you know, I don't have a problem with upper management, those requirements being in there for like the lieutenants and above. Like, their administration is a different game than working the streets or line level supervision. But I do, you know, I just think it's a move that a lot of departments made with these requirements up front. And you see it now that some departments will not hire without a bachelor's. That's a big mistake. It should be or military or like certain specific life experience kind of thing. But you know, it's ever changing. Like you said, law enforcement has changed so much in the last 20 years. It's a different, like, I'm the guy who fought body cams. Like I was out on video going no to body cams because I felt like they would take something that is like, they see this is really this big and try to hold you to what is on this camera, even though they may not have seen it, like perception issues.
Right.
Turns out that body cams were the best thing ever for law enforcement because they've showed the truth of so many BS complaints and cleared things and clean up a lot of things and show the pure violence on the streets that can happen. So they've turned out to be good. So, I've resisted change, but change is good sometimes. So you never know.
And I think all cops are that way at heart. We all resist change a little bit. It's just comes with the job.
I remember when MDTs were brand new, like the computers in the cars were only a few years old when I became a CSO. And there was guys that were coming out of the jail or promoting, coming back to the street, like from detectives or something, haven't seen a car in 10 years. And you can always tell the brand new sergeant, like sitting there trying to figure out how to log onto the computer. They had no idea, like they couldn't run their computer. It's just funny, like, cause they were the dinosaurs then. And then, when GPS came along, my trainees kept trying to put their little GPS in the window. I'm like, get that hell out
Exactly.
of here. Like, here's your
map book out.
Dude,
We don't even give them map books anymore. Now it's if they don't use GPSs, they're lost.
Crazy. So, that's so scary to me. Like, what if it just goes down? It's like when computer aided dispatch, like if you ever had your systems crash and all the MDTs or whatever you call them, the dispatch computers crash, and you have to go to manual reporting. There's some people who don't know how to do that.
That's what I was about to say. When you were going down that, when you talk about the old sergeant coming back out, because when the CAD goes down and they've, say it's down for a weekend, so now you got to manually write reports. Yeah, it's the newer generation is a little bit lost at that point.
Yeah, I had to sit there and handwrite my stuff for the first 7 or 8 years in patrol, and now everyone's laptoping it and doing all their crazy.
Yeah, press hard to get through the different copies. That way you can get it right through when you tear them off. So.
Oh, it was brutal, man. Brutal. We wrote in pencil, thank God, in LA, so we could erase it and keep going. But
wow,
good times. Things have changed, though.
A little bit. I think the world has changed, Ray.
Yeah, it's the cameras, the cell phone camera has changed everything, and that's not like a negative on law enforcement. It's just now you see what violence looks like. I think that's the biggest change, and I think that's why people have this rough look on cops because they only see the violent body cam. Now you're losing cops and live PD and all these things where you see good interactions.
Right.
You only see violence. The only thing you're going to see on the news is a shooting or a beatdown on body cam or on a cell phone video. The thing is, though, violence is ugly, no matter if it's good or bad force. It's an ugly thing, and people have maybe not been exposed to that as much as they are now. So now that the narrative of cops are racist, thirsty killers, people can kind of buy off on that in their mind because they refer back to all this violence they're seeing, shooting after shooting after shooting, and that's their only, lens on police.
Which is so sad because that is such, as it's such a small context, or in context, it's such a small amount of time, small amount of interactions. It's not those probably hundreds of thousands of interactions that are done across this country every year that are positive, that are helping people, that are showing cops at their best. And what's sad with this new cancel culture and so forth, some of these shows, even like that little silly dog, I know it's not officially canceled yet, but really we don't want to show that cops are good because inherently most of the guys I know are just plain old people like you and I that we have a job to do and we're going to go out there and just do the best we can.
Yeah. Anything with police is bad all of a sudden now because they're racist killers. And then you start talking numbers, I said this on my show today, but my daughter, she's 15, and she's obviously in a police family. She's been everyone in my family's cops, right? Like that's the kind of family we're in. I asked her when all this started going, I'm like, so how many people do you think, or how many unarmed black people do you think the police shot and killed last year? Just to see, hey, what do you think? Like, What does a normal person think out there? Oh, probably a couple hundred. And I'm just like, all right, we have work to do. There was 9. So
right. Yeah.
They can paint a narrative. They use these glorified violence body cam videos and everything else, and they've painted them into being bad. Just cancel. Cops are bad no matter what. And God help you if you're a person of color who's also a cop, because then you're even worse. They're in a different category.
Yeah, which is also equally bizarre. But as we know, and we are in a time where people are calling things what they're not. And it's just a bizarre world right now.
Yeah, it's it's flipped on its head. We'll put it that way. It is crazy to see just the bold-faced lies in media, like
Yeah.
their takes on some of these and the way they present issues in policing is just, it's just scary. Like the narrative that there's just automatically systemic racism in policing. I'm like, okay, cool. Where? Like
Right.
George Floyd murder was racist. Cool. Now all the body cam videos out. It's a murder, but show me the racism.
Exactly. In fact, with the context, it's the complete opposite because they were extremely polite. They were the other two individuals that actually cooperated with law enforcement. I mean, she was a little bit your typical sprayed roach, for lack of a better term. She's kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
She's just like not exact. She was cooperative, but she wasn't exactly forthcoming. But the other guy just hands him his ID and have a nice day, and you never see him again. And everybody there was the same race.
But nobody cares about that story. They don't care about that story. This is racism. It's systemic racism. It's been happening forever, blah, 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 blah. And they just tell people that without any facts behind it. Like,
Right.
if you look at the numbers, I mean, it's a police officer's 18 and a half times more likely to be murdered by a black man than a police officer killing a black man, period. Like,
Right.
that is a fact. But we won't talk about that, right? Like, that
For
makes
whatever
us
reason.
racist to even bring it up.
Yeah, which is sad. It's absolutely sad. And I mean, and I don't know, some people have differing opinions, but in my personal opinion, there wasn't systemic racism. In fact, I think that there are plenty of things we can point to, from Obama being elected to a lot of things that have happened in this country, that there was not systemic racism. Now, I'm careful to say that there is not, because there are people in play right now that are absolutely trying to incorporate things that are systemically racist, such as in Seattle asking, hey, can we get rid of white officers first instead of laying people off according to their hire date?
It's crazy. Like it's okay for that to be racist, or for that to happen and be racist, but the other direction is insane. It's absolutely crazy, man. Like, I don't know how people come to these conclusions that systemic racism exists and stuff. Because I've worked upper middle class white neighborhoods, I've worked lower class white neighborhoods, Hispanic neighborhoods, and black neighborhoods. I've worked them all.
Yep.
Guess who we targeted in each neighborhood? The criminal that was in those neighborhoods.
Yep.
And in the upper middle class, it was whites. It was white heroin junkies. In the lower whites, where I was chasing bikers and Nazis. Okay, yep. Literally, I worked white power gangs for a long time. And then in the black neighborhoods, you're going after the black criminals, and the Hispanics, the Hispanic. It's just, I don't know where this is lost. That, of course, it's not racial profiling, it's criminal profiling. You're looking for who's committing the crimes in that neighborhood, and that's just how it's going to go. And if it's an ultra violent neighborhood with a lot of shootings and murders, you're going to have to be more vigilant. You're going to have to jump out and have your gun out more often. When I worked South LA, 99% chance I would have my gun out in my traffic stop, at least tucked behind my leg.
Yep.
Or in my jacket a lot of times. Like, I used to sit there within my jacket, be like, hey, how you doing? And they all knew, they all knew what was going on. The good people didn't care. What's funny is in LA, my standard for whether or not I was going to do anything in enforcement is if they had a job. I'm like, hey, so where are you working right now? Oh, I'm not working. Okay, cool. You on probation? Yep. Okay. Let's take a look at your car.
Yeah.
Or if it's like, hey, where are you working right now? Oh, I'm over here, blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. Have a nice day. See you later. Literally, like, if you had a job, you're going to get off from me. Right. I'm pretty sure that's not racist, but hey,
Yeah, and that's what people don't understand at all. There's an article, when you go to school, when I was getting my bachelor's, there was a peer-reviewed article that's out that's called Driving While Black, where somebody had written an article on pretty much saying that traffic stops. And I had written pretty much a pretty lengthy rebuttal to that. And I flipped it on its head and said, if I have an 80-year-old grandma leaving a 90-year-old or a known drug house in a known drug community, and I'm doing enforcement on that house, she's going to get pulled over even if she's an 80-year-old white grandma. It has absolutely nothing to do with, and honestly, from the patrol side, I don't know how often you can even see the race of the driver when you go to stop a vehicle. Typically, it isn't until you actually approach the vehicle that you would know any specifics about who's actually behind that wheel outside of what the tag might tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just not what it seems. The people on the streets are usually the race of the community. That just makes sense to me. Yep. So if the people on the streets are the race of the community, they're going to be the people that are stopped and interacted with and enforcement actions taken against. It's not rocket science, but it's very convenient to say, well, 70% of the stops in South Los Angeles are against people of color. without saying 70% of the people in Los Angeles are people of color, right? Like you can't
Right.
be true about it. It's crazy. It's
Yeah. As John Adams said, facts are stubborn things. And for those who don't remember that, that's when he was defending the British, which is not a very popular opinion in the late 1700s in America. And that's facts are stubborn things, but people don't want to hear facts.
no. And you know what came up this week and it pissed me off again. It pisses me off every single time I heard it. Hands up, don't shoot Michael Brown. It was
Right.
the anniversary of it. Joe Biden's out there tweeting it. Kamala's tweeting it. Oh, they killed at the hands of the police, Michael Brown. No, actually, he committed a strong arm robbery, was trying to be stopped by Officer Darren Wilson, reached in, punched him, tried to take his gun, a shooting occurred. Wilson gets out of the car to go after him. He doubles back, comes to attack Wilson, and he got shot. That's what happened. The Obama DOJ says the same thing. They say hands up, don't shoot, did not occur, but we still have all of the left politicians still using that as a narrative. You have the NBA with hands up, don't shoot on jerseys this year.
Right.
Like, it didn't happen, but
Yeah, but yet it's part of the public narrative, which is just bizarre. In fact, they looked at it again. The new DA had looked at it in Ferguson yet again this year and dropped the case, saying that, yeah, there's nothing here. I don't know how many times. I feel bad for the officer, but I don't know how many, or the former officer, I don't know how many times they're going to keep bringing this back up. And every time they come to the same conclusion. And these aren't people that are right-leaning or conservative or in any stretch of the imagination coming to that conclusion.
If Eric Holder could have made a case against Darren Wilson, it would have been made, period. They would have done nothing. They would have loved nothing more than to put a case on him. They couldn't because there was not one.
Right.
He did the right thing. And he's still not working in police. His name is still getting thrown around by the media. His life is still ruined. Yep. And what about him? Nobody cares.
And it's sad. It really is sad because those, people that do the right thing, that's what, you're taught when you first come into this career. Integrity is the thing. You have to have integrity. And as long as you do the right thing, it's going to work out for you, and sadly, in the world of cancel culture, in the world of the media, where we're making decisions based not on facts, but rather on public opinion, you end up, if everyone grabs pitchforks and rakes and starts storming the castle, we're going to make decisions that are horrible. And that's not the way justice works anywhere.
No, and politicians and political narratives should not be getting in the way of people doing the right thing in their job. Wayne, when I started this job, the two big things I was taught in patrol training by my salty ass TO, and this guy had been in 7 officer involved shootings in his station, right? Busy place I worked. He's like, look, if you lie, you die. Period. Don't lie. You'll be gone. You'll get on the Brady list. You will not be a cop anymore. You'll never be a cop anywhere. You're done. Nobody trusts you. And take care of your partners. That's the biggest problem I have with the George Floyd incident. None of it had to happen.
Right.
The other ones there, they didn't do their job. They should have. They were saying the things, but they were new. He was the salty vet who trained, I think, 2 of them, 2 out of the 3 other officers. And they're like, hey, should you take your knee off? Should we roll him on his side? Should we do this? Should we do that? And he's like, nope. All of them, their duty and their right and the right thing to do as a cop or as a person would be to get them off, intervene. Like, if you don't lie and you intervene when you see something bad because someone's heated or whatever reason, you're probably going to be okay as a cop. That's how it used to be. But now it doesn't matter. Even if you do the right thing, they're going to screw you sometimes. So it's a scary time to be a police officer, man. I feel for you still being out there. Like, it's a lot easier for me to sit here and talk about this stuff now when I've been gone almost 4 years, and I don't have to go out there and do it and be under the scrutiny that you are. But, it's,
I'm hoping in some small way, what I'm doing, hopefully we can change some things. Hopefully we can make some improvements. And maybe I get called an idealist a lot as well. So I'm not saying this is going to work right, but hopefully in some small way, I believe in the one, you know what I mean? If you can help that one person, if you can make a difference in that one situation, and I honestly believe that. So even if I do all of this and all it ever is I help one person in the last 1.5 years that I've been doing it, or that one person, who knows what could happen. Maybe they become a sheriff of some small town and they remember a conversation like this and it makes a difference, then it's calling, then it's done what it needs to do.
100%. It really is about just changing hearts and minds, like war propaganda, right? Like getting people to understand a different perspective that they're not fed to by the media or politicians they listen to, or athletes and celebrities that want to weigh in on things that, they're living this privileged life themselves and want to talk about everything that's horrible about police. It's like, okay, well,
Yeah.
I agree with you. One person a day, man. If you change minds or give a perspective of what we go through or what we see, people don't even know. And that's, to circle back, the suicide issue with policing is super important. People don't understand what people actually have to go through. Like, people ask me, what is this job really about? And I kind of boil it down to one thing. I'm like, well, you go out every day and you meet 3 to 10 people a day who are having the worst day of their life over and over and over and over. Sometimes it's a domestic and it's a divorce. Sometimes it's a child death. Sometimes it's a car accident. Sometimes they're getting arrested. Sometimes their kids murdered. Whatever it is, it's awful. And dealing with that for 20, 30 years, that's a lot of baggage, man. That's a lot of emotional baggage. And to be demonized by everyone in the media on top of that, that's not a good situation. You're going to drive a lot of veteran cops out of the job because of that environment that they're creating. So it's a mess, man.
And it really affects, like you said, the suicide, and then the ones that it don't give in to that demon and don't go down that road. You have a whole nother issue with quality of life, and with that affecting their family. And, that's the other thing too. If we can just help our brothers and sisters that are out there as well, that, like you said, are going through these type things, what a difference that could make. And because everything expands. I mean, people don't live in little vacuums by themselves. We live in community. So it affects children, it affects their loved ones, it affects their brothers and sisters on the job, it affects all these different things. And it's just unbelievable what we can do just by helping that one officer, that one person, and, realizing what they're going through and then putting those resources in place.
Yeah, I mean, all this gets dragged home. I mean, look at the divorce rate in police. Look at all the issues that come with it, emotional baggage, getting close to people, losing relationships over this. The overtime that cops work, man. I used to work 100 hours a month. I was never home because I was just sucked into the life and, trying to pay the bills and get everything going. And, but all that chaos that you see on that extra, I worked an extra career in overtime probably, right?
Yeah.
So no sleep, bad diet, crazy environment, all these things, no emotional support. And then if you were to reach out for help, if you ever felt a certain way, you're probably going to get ostracized, put on the desk, and your gun taken away. Those aren't good situations.
Right. Yeah. And it's so preventable. Let me go a different direction real quick, because I don't want to take a lot of your time today. America's Keepers. Let's talk about that for a little while. I love the name. What gave you the idea, and tell us a little bit about what it is?
I started social media pages on Facebook in 2014 for the police during the Baltimore riots. I was still a cop. I was pissed, and I started publishing rioting footage, and it grew from then until now to about 2 million followers over about 50 pages on Facebook, and probably over 1 million are just in police. And then I have some patriotic stuff, some gun stuff, some politics stuff. So I basically I started using that as a news outlet. I have a news desk team, and we're pushing news that isn't told in mainstream media. I mean, some of it is, but a lot of it isn't. A lot of this stuff isn't, and we're pushing it out daily. And, our blog alone will get, anywhere from 10,000 to 50,000 hits a day. And we only launched that in January. So we're getting the word out there. We sponsor the Wounded Blue with a lot of our efforts that come through there. But America's Keepers, we're launching more podcasts like this. So we're going to talk about this later, but we're platforming other podcasters, other people in the police world, getting them out on our pages. Like, I don't have, with all of our pages on Facebook, I'm looking for other people to get their message out. Like, I have a good partner, Randy Sutton, who was one of the first guys on Cops and does all these podcasts and shows. And he's platformed now through there. We brought another guy on called the Chief, who's a Chicago, and he's an ex-chief out of Illinois, and he has a funny podcast he does. So we're using that to push Patriot news and podcasts, man. That's what we're all about. And that, it's been super important to me to get that out there, and we are helping people, and we get to spread awareness about the things that affect police officers and drive them to the Wounded Blue. You're looking for the donation side and for the support side. I'm able to do that, send officers there, and they get peer support, which is awesome. So, America's Keepers is still new, but it's getting there. It's a work in progress.
Well, aren't they always? Yeah, and it's so needed right now, because unfortunately, and we're not going to go down the whole road of fake news media and so forth, but there's so much that when this year began, between the COVID-19 stuff and then the George Floyd stuff and there's always been all this other stuff in the background too. I don't know, for a while there, what I was doing on a notes page is I was saving every article that within its own self, from your large news networks, your CNNs, your MSNBC, so forth, that actually had the information wasn't factual between the headline and their own body of information, where you could take that. And I don't remember how many hundreds I amassed. And it just got to the point that where one guy, it was overwhelming to keep track of it, because it's like, this is absolutely not true information per their own writings. And if that's the only thing they're getting a diet of, and I encourage people, you don't have to quit listening to those, even though I would if I was in a different line of work. But you got to get balance, because if that's the only thing you're listening to, my goodness, you're going to make decisions and think things that are probably not 100% accurate.
Yeah, I mean, running a news blog, I know what their business is. Their business is getting clicks and eyeballs on their page. They get paid more when that's why clickbait is so big. And that's exactly why you see headlines that don't even match the articles. And it happens all the time. It's disgusting. I'm glad you brought that up. Is a clickbait culture, and all of these journalists, because they've been ravaged with new media people like us putting out independent content, they have to compete on a bigger scale, so they go for the shock value. They're not going to shock it where cops are good, right? Like that's not the shock headline they're looking for. Clickbait is gross, man, but it is out there. It is totally disinformation. It's coordinated. The talking points that get put out go across the board on most of these mainstream things, and they ignore completely other stories, like the 5-year-old boy that was murdered, the white little boy that was murdered by a black man, point blank, shot in the face or shot in the head because he rode his bike on his lawn. Carson Hennet.
And I've only seen it on conservative media. That's the only place I've seen that story. Yeah.
Doesn't fit the narrative. How about the mass shooting in DC? 21 people shot, including an off-duty cop. No one's talking about that either. Biggest shooting in America in 2020.
Yeah, since January. Yep. Yeah. Not a peep out of the mainstream media.
It's scary.
And yet, the Rays down the Tampa Bay area on opening day put out a tweet that said, it's opening day of baseball. This is not exact verbiage, but something along the lines of opening day of baseball. Great day to arrest the killers of Breonna Taylor, which is complete and utter ridiculousness. I'm not even going to go down that road, but that got picked up by your ABCs, I saw that on all sorts of national media outlets.
I'm done with sports, man. I love football. I do. I've loved football my whole life. I used to be the biggest baseball fan. I'm not going to watch people spread misinformation and lies against the police in my sporting events. That was supposed to be an escape. I think you're going to see the teams are going to get murdered this year. I don't think they realize that half the money that they count on comes from people who they're now bashing, right? Like basically. And the combination of no fans in the seats, plus turning off half your audience. Yeah, I don't know. I would bet that you're going to see some big level, high level pro sports teams go bankrupt in the next year. And I hope they do.
Yeah, I'm with you. I couldn't agree more. And it's sad. And it is really frustrating because, like you said, we're hearing a narrative from players that are actually the poster child or the antithesis of exactly what they're saying. Like their ability to go out and make millions of dollars in America playing a kid's sport really does not fit the narrative of social injustice or racial injustice or any of these other injustices that you're claiming. In fact, if nothing else, it proves that capitalism works. It proves the opposite of what they're out there saying, which is, I think, what turns off a lot of people.
And I used to try to give the benefit of the doubt, but when you have like LeBron James out there, like running his mouth and he's the biggest China supporter, it just can't. You can't have it both ways. You can't have like the atrocities of China and they're propping up the NBA and they're putting Muslims in slave camps in China and they're okay with that. Won't talk about it. Like not allowed to even mention Chinese politics. So don't tell me you really care about injustice. It's about money.
Yep. Sadly, it is. And it kind of goes back to even your clickbait thing. At the end of the day, it's about sales. And if we can get this out here, who cares if it's true or not? Well, the problem is a lot of people don't do the research. Quite frankly, a lot of people don't have the time. Like I can tell you, we barely have the time. So the general public, sure as heck, who isn't even interested in it, they just kind of get this tidbit or that tidbit. They're not even doing the research to even understand how faulty the premise and some of the statements they're making is.
Well, also from running news sites, I know that the majority of people read a headline and call that the fact. Do not even read the article. So their information is from scrolling on social. They've got their thumb going and they're seeing headlines. And the more clickbaity they are, whatever, that's probably what they'll remember more. They're not reading these articles. They're not watching the videos. They're not digging into the story and finding the truth of the matter and making a decision. They're just reading clickbait, and that's like fact to them. The biggest thing I could tell people is, like, if you don't know who to listen to or what side you should listen to and all this stuff, don't listen to anything major news networks. Go to independent journalists. Go on Twitter. Twitter is full of the best reporting. Like, every single day for the last 70 days, I don't know when you'll air this, but it's 70 days plus of rioting in Portland, okay? And even Seattle, but especially Portland, you don't see any of that on the news. But when I go on Twitter every morning, I'm seeing it every single day. The videos of the actual disturbances, of them attacking officers, of all of these things happening over and over and over that you will not see on mainstream media, period.
Correct.
It's not there. It's your job in this day and age when media, as you know it, TV is collapsing, and they're feeling the pain, and that's why you're seeing this rush to try to stay alive. I think it's out of desperation, but the quicker you can switch to more of the independent style journalism, I mean, you're going to get more fact. I would say.
I think you're absolutely right. And sadly, I mean, that's a whole nother conversation with some of the censorship we're seeing on those platforms. But at least in general, for right now, a lot of these independent guys that are doing stuff like you and I, if they're out that way, or if it's part of their business model, they can go out there and they're getting this information, at least pushing it out on Twitter and so forth. So people can get informed if they're willing to get informed.
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
So I got to ask you on America's Keepers, you referred to yourself as a patriot. Define patriot for me.
I'm not a Republican. Like that's like where I would start. I'm a conservative patriot. I believe in the Constitution. I was an oath keeper since I was 18 years old. I raised my hand the first time. I meant that oath. I still do. I hold other officers and other military folks to that oath. The oath is to the Constitution. It's not to the president. It's not to the police chief. It's not to the mayor. It is to the Constitution. And I'm a firm believer in everything that isn't in the Constitution and Bill of Rights. That's what I consider to be a patriot, is someone who follows the founding fathers and the concept of it and protects it. Like, it has to be protected at any cost. And that could be meaning just speaking out like I do, or who else knows, like raising your hand and getting in a police car or joining the military or doing your part to protect that. But that's what it is for me. And if you hate this country, you shouldn't be here. There's so many of these politicians, I feel like they hate our country. They're just trying to push it away as much as possible and want to blow up Mount Rushmore and do all these radical things. And Confederate statues, that's a whole other issue, but like they're trying to take down statues of Abraham Lincoln and attack those. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, we're not even paying attention to history. That's what patriotism is to me, though. It's about this idea that it's worked for so long based on a constitution that nobody else in the world can come close to.
Yeah, I love that. And that is so true. And that's a great answer. And I'm the same way. In fact, I actually speak out from time to time against the two-party system, because I'm not a big fan of there only being two choices, and the fact that if you don't pick one or the other, they're not going to win in current day America, which I kind of have an issue with, because you're right. We need to go back to what the Constitution said and those constitutional values. So that's awesome. I couldn't agree more. Another quick thought on what you were saying with the Confederate statues, we could probably find middle ground with some people on those specifically, except that there was a talk show host I was listening to that he said, the sad thing is now I can't go buy a Robert E. Lee statue or something like that with my kid and be like, hey, let me tell you this story and what happened here so that we as America don't repeat it. And that's what the other thing, we're never going to find common ground with people that want to destroy, like your Ben Franklin statues or your Christopher Columbus statues, so forth. And, yes, we could make an argument with maybe the Confederacy, but there again, why would you want to take away that opportunity to teach the next generation about history and what happened so that we never repeat those mistakes again?
Erasing history is a playbook of the Taliban, of the communists. Like, erasing history is not the answer. Teaching history is the answer, not whitewashing it, changing it what it was and getting away from it. And look, if some of these statues needs to come down, let's look at that, and let's look at it from a legal standpoint. Go to your city council and demand it. Go through the proper channels. I don't care what statue it is. If it involves rioting and ripping it down and throwing things at the cops while they're there trying to protect it, then it's wrong, period.
Yep.
We have laws for a reason. Law and order.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Just real quick, let us know a little bit about, you talked a little bit about the Wounded Blue. How do people get involved?
Okay, so thewoundedblue.org, it is the National Assistance Program for Injured and Disabled Officers. My partner, he's a retired lieutenant out of Las Vegas Metro, Randy Sutton. He's founded this. It's his baby. He's traveling 3-4 days a week. He's on Fox News twice a week, probably talking about it. Full peer support teams. We've been able to provide assistance to hundreds and hundreds of officers affected by the riot so far. They have a whole it's called Code 4 Wellness program that has teledocs and counseling and all these things, and they've been able to provide that through donations to a lot of officers. It's a great organization. Wounded Blue, thewoundedblue.org. Definitely check that out. And it's a great organization.
Perfect. I'll be sure to link all that up as well so everyone can find it. Let me ask you in closing and a question that I ask everybody that I have on the show. We've hit on a lot of points and we could probably keep going for hours. I love the stuff that we're talking about here. But if we're going to boil it down, if we're going to create that one takeaway, what is that one thing that law enforcement officers can do that's going to make a difference in their personal lives? Kind of that one takeaway that someone can take from this show.
Well, that's a rough question here. The one takeaway that can make them better in their personal lives is to not feel personally attacked by what's happening. It's not about the individual officer. You're a part of a bigger machine. It was very hard for me, like after Ferguson, honestly, like where I felt like everybody hated us for that time. But to kind of like decentralize from that, stay away from that feeling that it's attack on you. It's attack on law and order. It's not specifically you. You cannot get wrapped up in that emotionally because it'll destroy you. And that's letting them destroy you. Like, don't let them in to screw your head up, period. Like, the more you can protect your mental health. I mean, that's the most important thing I see. Like, like the suicide factor in this job is incredible. Like I've been touched by that personally, numerous times, kind of thing. The takeaway is make sure you go home at the end of the day and that end of the career, you can still hang out with your kids and be a normal person, no matter what. That's
great. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. What's the best way for people to connect with you?
Well, since you asked, you can go to americaskeepers.com, or we're doing a new show. It's about 3 weeks in. We're having a good time. We do a live show every morning, 11 Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific at Thin Blue Line Show podcast. It's called Coffee with Cops, and you can find us at coffeewithcopsshow.com.
Very good. And I'll be sure to link that all up. And I've had the opportunity of catching it as well. It's a great show. So I will definitely encourage all my listeners to check that one out as well. Ray, thank you so much for coming on.
I appreciate it, Wayne. Anytime, bud.
Thank you.